guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Angela, and today we're going to be chatting about a recent read and doing a bit of a book shopping vlog. Before I disappeared to catch up on grad school work, we went book shopping in Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth is one of my favorite cities. Specks of what we came down south for still exist in Fort Worth. It's old to the bone. Below sun-soaked buildings and big long roads is the scrap of an old western cow town. If you're new to the area and want to get a feel for the city, check out Sundance Square, which is a really touristy entertainment district in downtown Fort Worth, but it's definitely worth the hype and I highly recommend it because it's a really fun place to walk around. After that, if you get a chance, drive down to the Stockyards National Historic District. This is where the twice-a-day cattle drives are held every day at 11:30 a.m. and 4:00 p.m. They are so much fun to watch. They do have a cowboy museum near the Stockyards, but one of my favorite museums is located closer to the museum district in Fort Worth, and that is the National Cowgirl Museum, which is one of the more underrated art and history museums in Fort Worth. Fort Worth has tons of art museums. There's the Modern, there's the Amon Carter Museum, there's the Sid Richardson Museum, there's also the Kimbell. The Kimbell holds one of my favorite paintings of all time. It's called Portia and Brutus. It's this kind of painting that from very far away looks really innocent, and then when you get up close, it's like, oh, okay, that's what that painting's about. It's a little more grotesque, and it definitely has a lot more going on. Because of the museums and popular tourist attractions that exist in Fort Worth, I have this very old world image of the city built up in my head, and I think it's really interesting that in spite of the new businesses that exist within the city, that image that I have of Fort Worth being such an old cow town has not broken in any which way, and those two sides to Fort Worth, sort of the older side and the newer side, can fully coexist in harmony because they're both charming in their own ways, and I think that's really interesting. Some of the newer things to do in Fort Worth include a trip to Melt Ice Creams. This is one of my favorite local artisan ice cream shops in the area. It is very aesthetic. I love the whole ambiance of it. It feels very fresh. It is quite Instagrammy, so if you're looking for a good photo spot in Fort Worth, this is one of my favorites. It has this like black and yellow color scheme that really pops. That is located on Magnolia Avenue, which is a hub of lots of boutiques. And there's also Inspiration Alley. This is in the Foundry District, and this is an urban outdoor gallery near Doc's Record Shop, which is a record shop that has new and old records. I absolutely love Inspiration Alley because it's just a really nice area to walk through and check out all of the artwork. It's usually really busy. I'm not sure about now because when we visited it was 2018. The bookstore that we visited is also very much new Fort Worth. It's called Leaves Book and Tea Shop, and it's an independent bookstore that also carries over 50 varieties of tea.
Just remember this. We could have been stardust, same world but without us. Something made us find each other out there. Made us realize we're more than just stardust. Ignore this fact if you must, to do what your dreams are telling you to do. And I'll be out there looking for someone like you.
The entire atmosphere of this bookstore is incredibly relaxing. There's a little courtyard outside with native Texas plants, and it does have an indoor and outdoor seating area, which I really loved. Several of the books in the bookstore are environment focused, so if you're looking for books on environmentalism, horticulture, plant care, gardening, this is the place to go to. It's not their sole focus because they also have books by POC authors, which I really loved as well. The whole bookstore fit into this theme of leaves. Some of their bookshelves were also shaped like trees with branches, and I just enjoyed the shelving of this whole bookstore. It was a little sparse but also very aesthetic in its own way. The entire atmosphere of this bookstore just felt like this thick physical layer of peacefulness. It was so nice. I picked up some Texas breakfast tea, which tastes a lot like English breakfast tea with a more cinnamon roll aftertaste. I really loved it. I highly recommend it. And the book that I picked up was the Henna Wars. Thank you so much for recommending this book on my previous book shopping vlog. The story follows Nishat, who is a lesbian Bangladeshi Bengali Muslim teen who has just come out to her parents, and their silence understandably leaves her heartbroken. And there's also an overarching story. Nishat chooses to do henna art as her business, and our childhood friend Flavia, who sort of reappears in her life, decides to do the same, hence the title Henna Wars. I absolutely love the way South Asian culture was represented in this book. It was celebrated, but it also didn't shy away from the hypocrisies that exist. just Nishat is so confident in her relationship with her culture, and I love that. Her assurity in herself and her identity was so refreshing to see. The author has a playlist of songs that she listened to while drafting and editing this book. They do have some really amazing South Asian songs on that list. I highly recommend that, and I'll leave a link to it in the description box below if you want to get a better feel for the storyline, because I do think that after reading it and then listening to her playlist, it definitely fits. That being said, there are a few things that I want to discuss. So this book covers a lot. There is so many topics that the author chooses to tackle, and she does them quite brilliantly. There is one that is brought up throughout the story that I felt could have been fleshed out a little more, and that's the topic of cultural appropriation. Nishat is angry at Flavia for choosing henna art as her business, and it's described as cultural appropriation. I would have loved to see the reasoning as to why. In the book, the idea of henna is simply talked about as, this is a South Asian thing, it's just something we do. It's this idea that outside of that, people shouldn't really be doing henna, dependent on the context and the intent. There were other characters who had their own thoughts on henna where I was like, I got that and was described very clearly, but in the case of Flavia, I don't think that she pursued henna with the intent of hurting anybody. In fact, Flavia's argument as to why henna art was not cultural appropriation made more sense to me than Nishat's commentary on why it was, because in her commentary it was frequently described as, this is cultural appropriation. Seeing the reasoning behind that and kind of fleshing out that idea more would have provided more context and more understanding, and I felt like it could have been a deeper conversation point. Then again, there are so many conversation points within this book that I do feel like the author wanted to bring up another one and maybe didn't have the time to fully explore that concept, but I would have loved to see it explored a little bit more. I also took issue with how responsibilities for bad actions were dealt with in this book. So in this book, no one character is perfect. Every character is flawed, and there are varying levels of imperfection, and I absolutely love that. It made them feel all the more real. I definitely could find myself growing fond of many of the characters. That being said, I felt like the main character picked and chose who got to take responsibility for actions and who had to deal with consequences based on her relationship with them or how close she was to them. While I understand from her perspective that she didn't want to hurt the people who were closest to her, I also felt that she was damaging their growth by not fully addressing the situation in private even, or fully explaining the context of why certain actions were wrong or damaging. It was just brush it under the carpet mentality. I want to keep this review as spoiler free as possible, but there are certain instances that I'm thinking of in particular, but it will also spoil a bit of the story. It was just really frustrating as a reader because there were so many times when I just wanted to tell Nishat, go ahead, tell them it's wrong. It didn't happen, and I just felt like it was very much glossed over, but I also props to the author for creating a character that I cared about so deeply that I did want to have a conversation with them. And lastly, one of the things that I was expecting going into the book was that it was going to be an enemies to lovers romance, since it's called the Henna Wars. That is not the case. This is not an enemies to lover or hate to love romance. These are two childhood friends who have grown apart, come back together in the form of a crush, and it develops into something more. My problem with the romance is, as cute as it was, it just didn't feel like it had a solid foundation or ground. It felt like the chemistry was very much rooted in a gut feeling about her love interest's personality and physical attraction. I felt like I would have loved to see a more deeper emotional connection explored between the two. I think that would have been something that gave it a little more solidity. That being said, I do highly recommend this. I do feel like it is for younger young adult audiences, but it is one of the best young adult contemporaries with South Asian representation that I've read. It wasn't afraid of being nuanced, and the family dynamics that were explored in this story weren't a highlights reel at all, which I loved. The author took the time to raise awareness and dig a little deeper. You can tell that the author really loves her culture through the way that the work is told. So there are certain things about this book that are very, very much South Asian, and I love that they weren't explained. There were terms and vocabulary that was used that wasn't defined. I have read other books where they do define the term, and I do think that's catering the book to a different audience, and while that has their own merit, I love that this book was written for brown girls. It just made it all the more special for me. That is the book that I picked up. I think overall I would rate this 3.5 4 stars. My Goodreads ratings are not accurate at all. I rate something immediately and then I'll change it like a year later, or I'll have different feelings about it 6 months later. They're very fluid ratings. This is such a complicated story, but it's so well executed because it feels very simple when you come out of it. It has a lot of subplots and there are a lot of things that it's dealing with. I do really appreciate that the author took the time to carve this convoluted journey of Nishat into something that's very simple and relatable, and I think it was very well done. So that is the book that I picked up from Leaves Book and Tea Shop. Let me know what your favorite books are in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys!